Monday, September 29th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we talk about the cloud buzzword computing.
Let's do this. Hey, Rim, you know what today is?
What is today?
It's your favorite holiday.
Monday?
Rosh Hashanah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, now you can eat. Your eating of honey on challah will be appropriate.
So what's wrong with the fact that I eat milk and honey and challah, only without the milk?
There's nothing wrong with it, but it's like if someone ate a green bagel, but it wasn't St. Patrick's Day. That's what it's sort of like. It's,
I think it's more like eating cake when it's not your birthday or anyone else's birthday.
No, that's okay. You can eat cake all the time, but
So you realize honey on bread has been a staple of non-Jewish people for a long time. The Greeks would eat honey without even the bread. They just eat honeysuckle.
yeah. But because it's Rosh Hashanah, you have to get a round challah. You can't get the normal braided one. You have to get a round one.
Why would I do that? I like the braided ones.
I'm just saying that's what the holiday is.
Well, one, I don't have a challah. What am I going to do?
We should go get one.
I didn't get one.
No, shit, you're fucking it all up.
Actually, the reason I didn't get one is because I got a beard popper, right? And I thought I'd bring one home to Emily. So I was like, all right. And I bought two, and I ate one, and then I put the other one in the fridge. And then I'm working a little late. But when I say I work late, that means I worked like 2 minutes late. So it's like, oh, crap, gotta go. So I walk out the door, and I get to the elevator. I'm like, no, my beard popper. So I walk halfway back to my office, and then I'm like, shit, now I won't have time. Indecision. And I just went back to the elevator. And then I went down, barely got on my train. Then I'm like, I wanted a loaf of bread.
I'll get some breads tomorrow, maybe.
Maybe.
Actually,
No, I just bought a loaf of bread. We've got 2 loaves of normal bread now.
there was a thread in the forums. I started writing
Thread about bread?
No, I was writing a post in it, and then
A post about, I can't think of any synonym that rhymes with post that means bread.
I don't know.
Host! Like in Catholic Church.
Whatever.
Post about host. I'm on a roll. You realize that I just needed 2 bread jokes that I could then say, I'm on a roll.
Anyway.
You realize how wonderful that was to actually pull that off.
No.
I don't think you understand.
You're throwing me off. I was writing a post in the forums. I got distracted, and then I didn't realize it was time to leave work, and I saw the clock. I said, oh, shit, and I just deleted the post and didn't post it.
You know, actually, someone who in the forum who hadn't posted forever, they posted. I've noticed we get a lot of people who join the forum, and they don't post for 4 or 5 months. Then suddenly they start posting. And one of them basically said, yeah, actually, I've started a lot of posts, and then I look at it, and then I just decide it wasn't worth it, and then halfway through, I just click back.
Actually, my post was worth it, but I feel like it's too much. I don't want to type it all. It hurts.
Well, I realized one, I do that with about half the time I start to respond to something in the forum, I'll get halfway through it, and then just go, fuck it, and close the tab.
Right. A couple other items of interest, right? I was... for people who don't know, Commerce Bank, I don't know if there's a Commerce Bank near you, but there's some in Manhattan, right? They have a machine called the Penny Arcade. Have I mentioned this on the show before?
I think you did once a long time ago.
I've mentioned it not on the show, but I'm mentioning on the show just for good measure. A second time, maybe. And the Penny Arcade, not related to the webcomic, is basically a Coinstar machine. You dump change in it, and then they give you a receipt, and then you get cash for your receipt, right?
Well, there's a catch.
Or a check.
There's a catch.
What's the catch?
They don't take any of your money.
Exactly. Yeah, unlike a Coinstar machine, which takes money, charges a fee, or, forces you to get gift cards if you want all your money, or other banks which will only accept change if you roll it up and only accept change, if you're have an account there.
Man,
the Commerce Bank lets you anyone dump change into the machine and convert it. And I went into the bank today and I said, is this for real? And there was a person there, and then she was all nice, and she was like, yes, it's totally for real. So tomorrow I'm going to bring an entire gallon of change down there.
Wait, tomorrow? You've been saying you're going to do this for a year.
I'm doing it tomorrow because it's full. I can't fit any more change in it. I have to do it tomorrow.
See, yeah, I guess my problem is I have a much larger thing to put change in.
You going to carry that to the city?
No, it's already too heavy.
We can carry it together.
Also, now that I've been reading the Life and Times of Scrooge McDuck, I kind of don't want to ever get rid of it.
Well, you see, you gotta... If Scrooge was alive today, he would have dumped it in the machine. He would have just, you would have gone specifically to that machine because it's such a long trek carrying a heavy thing, hard work to get it converted and then, put it somewhere where it gets interest.
No, he wouldn't have because it depends if those coins all meant something.
Yeah,
Man,
did
I gotta
any of
say-
those coins mean something?
A couple do. There's one Sacagawea in there. I like Sacagaweas. There's a couple of wheat pennies. I really like wheat pennies. Like I don't collect them, but I have a whole bunch of them.
I wonder if that machine is actually going to work with dollar coins, because I got a few in there also.
The scary thing is because
There might even
basically
be a $50 in there.
how lazy I am when it comes to my pockets is that when I get home, I basically empty the money contents of my pockets into that thing, and it often includes like 5s and 10s. Because, I'm in a hurry all the time in the city. So I'll get like a bagel. I'll pay with a 20. I'll get change. I'm in a hurry, so I take the change and throw it in my pocket. Then I get home and I throw it in the bin. So sometimes I'll be like, I don't want to go to the ATM. So I open that thing. There'll be like $300 in like bill change in there. I pull it out and use it. The thing, I feel like I've gotten careless with money.
Yeah. The only final item of note is the Mets are done.
Yeah, they are.
They sucked it up, which is classic. Consider if you know the Mets, it's sort of like sort of poetic. It's like how it's supposed to go down.
The thing is,
totally sucking it up.
There's a difference between the Mets sucking it up, where people kind of thought, people thought maybe they had a chance, but then after they lose in retrospect, they're like, yeah, they never had a chance.
What it was, the Mets have always been sort of like, the bums, and then they sort of more recently have been trying to be the Yankees or the Red Sox. The teams that spend $1 million to get good players and win. And 2 years in a row, it hasn't worked.
I much prefer the teams.
In fact, it's failed spectacularly 2 years
where
in a row.
the idea of a fair weather fan could not possibly exist. I mean,
Yes.
I'm a fan of the Detroit Lions.
They're worse this year than ever.
Well, the thing is,
they've only been in one playoff game since the late 50s.
Yes, I realized that
I don't think they won that playoff
if the
game.
Lions did better than they do now, I would not be a fan of them. I would only be a fan. It's pretty much if they're a great team, I'd be really excited about them because I like having the Red Wings. They're a great team. They're always in contention for the Stanley Cup. They're always a dangerous team. And even if they don't win the Stanley Cup every year, they always get close, and it's always really dangerous when you're playing against them. And I like that. And I also like a team that's underdog scrappy. I hate it when a team's just mediocre. They just lose a lot, but they don't lose enough to where losing becomes a thing. Yeah, the Lions are playing. Woohoo!
No, I'm more, I don't like a team that just wins all the time, but I gotta tell you, Giants doing so well right now. Not gonna complain. Not complaining. But really, I think what you really think is most important in choosing your team is sort of for me, it's the history of the team.
Yes,
the
history of losing.
I can't get it. Well, it has to just be a deep history. One of those I can't like an expansion team that's been around for 10 years.
Unless
it's
they have a crazy story about them. Maybe they were founded by God.
Maybe, but it's like Mets, been around for since the early 60s. It's pretty old.
Early 60s. Pshaw. The Red Wings are the oldest continuous hockey franchise in the NHL.
Yeah, so that's all
Rich
right.
history there. They used to play in the Coliseum, which, as my dad would tell me,
Had lots of Christians and Lions.
was so... I see what you did there. Basically, it was very tall. And the top seats, you'd almost be leaning over this death
They were just
vault.
these square stone things that just are really long and roundish, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, they didn't really have ice back then.
And the commissioner would give a thumbs up or a thumbs down if there's no goal judge at the time.
They just basically, it wasn't hockey so much as they just killed each other.
Yeah, something like that. Oh, isn't that what hockey is?
You know what? I gotta say, while I prefer modern hockey, there's something about watching an old hockey game with those leather skull caps, and basically the goalie is at risk for his life at every second, and a lot of goalies got killed.
Yeah. Okay, just to wrap up the opening bits and get to the real bits with the hockey, right? The Rangers are currently in Europe, playing some Europe teams before the season starts. And they played a bunch of preseason games before they left for Europe. If you didn't notice all those people with Rangers jerseys when he went to the YAF, right? I'm calling it the YAF from now on.
Yeah.
New York Anime Festival. Yeah, they lost every preseason game so far, and they're playing Detroit once this year in Detroit.
I know. You realize I always miss the time the Red Wings will come to New York and play them is the time I'm going to pay whatever it takes to be there.
And you've never been to Madison Square Garden either.
Nah.
The greatest indoor basketball and hockey facility in the world.
But then again, it lacks something very important. You see, the Joe Louis Arena, as I am often likened to say, does not have a statue of Joe Louis out in the front of it. It has a gigantic statue of Joe Louis's fist.
That's all right.
It's possibly the best statue in the world.
Madison Square Garden has
I like to call it the Big O.
Madison Square Garden has a whole train station.
But it doesn't have a giant fist.
Well, you can go see some boxing down in it sometimes. And then
Yeah, I
you'll
guess
see
I
lots
could.
lots of fists. All right. Anyway, that's enough of that. Let's get to the tech action.
All right, so, it wasn't that long ago we talked about how Apple apparently hates podcasting. And they did that thing where there was an app that did exactly what everyone who has an iPhone wants. And then Apple said, no.
Well, it did it mostly because the only problem with it didn't integrate with the built-in iPod functionality.
No, but that's the point. Basically, it did the one thing that the iPhone built-in iTunes thing doesn't do.
Yeah.
And then Apple said, no, you can't have it because it competes with an existing function. But obviously that's bullshit.
And I asked the guy who made it, and he said he would get an interview with us, but then he didn't email me back. So, boo.
But I thought, that was crap. And, we had a lot of speculation as to why. And then a couple other apps, like big apps that did similarly important things, got rejected. Meanwhile, as someone aptly pointed out on Slashdot, man, I feel like I should just make, a flashlight app because there's like 50 of those and they all seem to make money.
Yeah. I mean, this is the problem that's going on is you have a situation in which Apple has provided this channel and through which you can make a lot of money. But because of the way the channel is closed, right? People aren't willing to sort of put in an investment in making something actually interesting because anything interesting is not allowed. It's very difficult to make anything interesting because you can't get any help because of the NDA.
And we can't figure out why Apple's making the arbitrary decisions they are because they don't have to tell us and they won't tell us.
Yeah, and it's like you make this big expensive app. It took you like months to make and lots of money paying developers, and then Apple at the last second could just say, yeah, we're not going to let you put it on there, and then you just wasted all that time and money. So no one's going to gamble on it.
Now, I wouldn't have talked about this
Thus,
again.
all the apps are shovelware.
I mean, it's kind of like my old Jack Thompson thing where I've already talked about the bad thing you did. You really have to go well beyond that for me to even consider talking about you again because I only have so many minutes of showtime to talk about tech stuff. But Apple, went so far beyond what I would have expected or what I could conduct. I can't even, the magnitude of this just really irks me. But basically, Apple got a lot of bad press about these apps that got rejected from the tech community. So basically, what they did is they got very introspective and said, well, obviously, what we need to do is cover applications to the iPhone App Store with an NDA so that people can't tell anyone if we rejected their app. That way, we can't have any bad press. Brilliant! And evil, totally evil. Think about this. Apple basically has said that if you submit an app to them and they reject it, you cannot say if it got rejected. It's ludicrous. It's evil. It serves no purpose whatsoever.
I think there's going to be some lawsuit action over
except
this.
to basically protect Apple from the bad press that it generated itself by being evil in the first place.
Yeah.
And I used to speculate, it's hard to say exactly what Apple's motivations are. I mean, we had a lot of theories. But
if they would just open it up, everyone would be praising them, and they'd be rolling in the bank twice as much as they are now. So I don't know why they don't.
Here's the thing.
What is their thinking?
Let's say I was Apple, right? Somehow, I am Apple. Not Steve Jobs, but I am like the avatar of Apple. And I don't want I keep saying iPods. I don't want podcasts to succeed at all, as an example. Like that, I just do not want them to succeed. I have a lot of reasons, whatever, doesn't matter what they are. Instead of doing all this bad PR crap, I would have just said something like, the reason we rejected this app is because we have something much better in the works, but the technology is not quite there yet, and we're not going to let you, the consumer, get something subpar. Wait for the real thing. And then just not give a date, and then slowly let that fade. And then all the bad press disappears. And then a year later, I get the one angry blog nerd saying, Apple lied to me and no one pays attention.
Yeah, people actually seem to pay attention to that sort of thing.
But it wouldn't have generated nearly as much bad press as rejecting it, giving an absolutely fallacious reason for rejecting it.
It's not just podcasting either. There's a whole bunch of apps that are being rejected all over the place. And here's the thing, right? A lot of the things they say, right, we'll reject your app for this or that, right? There are apps out there that do things that are technically against the rules.
Yes.
And it's like, well, how did that app get in? It's breaking the rules, but
plus,
this one
look, they
didn't.
say you can, they don't want duplicate functionality. Among apps.
There's a famous combination of words. The famous combination is arbitrary and capricious.
We've been using those two words a lot lately. I mean, the word capricious and the word arbitrary, when combined, are like the thing of the month for us.
Well, they're like husband and wife.
Yeah, Abbott and Costello.
Right.
But I don't know what else I can say about this other than that it's bullshit. And I can't let it lie. So Apple, the only reason you're allowed to get away with this is because the Android has its own problems.
All right, so I'm going to talk about this Android phone, right? We've been waiting for this, right? I mean, think about this. I got the iPhone, right? And you know what? I'm sticking with the iPhone, and I'll tell you why. But I got to tell you, when I got the iPhone, I was thinking, well, either I get this now or I wait for the Android. And seeing that the Android, I'm glad that I got the iPhone. But both are flawed. They're just different, right? iPhone, obviously, as we just discussed, problem, closed platform, evil Apple locking you down.
But
right?
I mean, don't forget, as down as I am on Apple right now, the iPhone is still like one of the best pieces of technology out there. It's just, it could be so much more. Why is that always
same
what
as
we have
Nintendo?
Same as like every piece of technology I ever touch is like, wow, with a slight modification, this could be transcendent, but instead it's simply okay.
Yep. Meanwhile, okay, so the Android phone finally came out, and what does the Android phone do that I was hoping from the iPhone? Well, it's from Google and T-Mobile, so of course it works better with the Google stuff than the iPhone does.
But it's T-Mobile.
Well, what's wrong with T-Mobile?
Their coverage is not great in a lot of places.
That's right. The T-Mobile coverage is not so great, and their 3G is supposedly...
Oh, wow. When you said, what's wrong with T-Mobile, I thought whatever I said, you were going to argue against me. But no, T-Mobile's coverage sucks.
No, T-Mobile's coverage is not as good compared to AT&T, Verizon.
But then again, AT&T's not that good either.
AT&T's fine.
Except in Beacon.
Well, no, except at our house, specifically.
Yes. Well, all right. In our house and like this 100-foot radius around our house, there's like no AT&T coverage.
Right. So that you
my BlackBerry doesn't work for crap.
Right. Anyway, but T-Mobile's 3G coverage, is sort of new. They've got it in 20-something cities, I think, but it's not that big. But someone, if you're on it, you're like the only one on it. So it's actually pretty nice because you have this 3G all to yourself if you have it. And in the city, I'm pretty sure the 3G's there. And the other good things about the Android phone, right? It works well with the Google stuff. With the iPhone, does not do as well as the Android phone. So, like my Google Calendar, I still cannot sync with the iPhone, which is pretty bad. Also, it's open, which is, the iPhone is closed, the Android is open. It has a keyboard, if you're not liking the iPhone touchy keyboard, which I've gotten kind of used to, but still, even getting used to it, I can type on it, but say I would, if I had to type in like a long, complicated password, it's annoying.
You know what I realized? Like, I was holding my BlackBerry the other day, and like, it's weird. It's like the iPhone and the BlackBerry are exactly equal in terms of input in my idea, but they both, like, if I was using an iPhone, it'd be great until I wanted to type something. And if I'm using a BlackBerry, it's great until I want to navigate around something.
Yep.
But I realized for me personally, if I had the iPhone screen on the front and just a QWERTY keyboard on the back, I could hold it with the screen in front of me and type on the back, just touch typing.
Well, the Android does that. It has it's a slider with a touch screen. So that's what it is.
The Android it'd be great for me, except for the fact that it has the same level of flaws that the iPhone does.
Right. So here's what's wrong, right, with the Android phone, right? Well, the first problem, right, is that it's open, so you can make anything for it, right? But there's a lot of things that aren't made for it yet. Like, it doesn't have a video playing software. You have to get one from somewhere, which is fine for someone like us who knows how to use it, but the interface is really bad. The music playing interface is also really bad. It's like they have all these, it has functionality, but the interface is lacking. It's a lot like the Nokia devices. The functionality of the Nokia devices has this insane feature list. You basically do anything, but the interface is bad. And on a mobile device, bad interface on a feature, as far as I'm concerned, effectively makes the feature useless. Because if I used to have a BlackBerry, all right, when I worked for that other company. That BlackBerry had a shit ton of features. I only ever used it for the company email, even though I could have used it for other things, and I tried to use it for other things. And even the cell phone I just got rid of has a million features I never used because the interface was so bad and so painful, it wasn't worth it to use the feature. It was more convenient not to use the feature than to use it. And that's the Nokia device, the Android, whatever. Android has an okay interface in general, but the specific apps, have some problems in that department. So even though it's a music player, if the interface on the music player sucks, it's no good. And actually, it has the Amazon MP3 store built in, which is pretty cool. No DRM, download direct, whatnot. But Amazon MP3 store is still overpriced for my taste. Otherwise, I'd buy a whole lot of music from it, and I'd be broke. The main problem with the Android phone in the Book of Scott is that to plug in some headphones, you need to get this little adapter that connects, and then the headphones go into that. It doesn't have a headphone hole.
We already learned this lesson from Nintendo, and Nintendo rectified the situation.
Yes. You see, the main thing in the iPhone 3G is that it is a iPod. Full-on, perfect iPod.
And I need iPod a lot more than I need phone.
And a phone, and an internet device, and it does all of those things equally well. The Android is a phone and an internet device, but its media playing interface is such that it's effectively useless. Thus, if I had the Android phone, I would still need an iPod Nano. I really, really want an open device. I really, really, really want to be able to do any software I want and have all these features like tethering and whatnot. But the ability to be able to carry one less physical thing on my person on a day-to-day basis makes such a huge difference in everyday life. It's not worth it. That's how big a deal that is. And these companies don't seem to realize that carrying fewer things is a huge deal. Huge. It's like, I don't have to remember to have a phone and an iPod. I only have to carry one thing. And you know what I realized? If technology wasn't stupid and the iPhone was fully open, right? Everything, right? I wouldn't need to carry anything but the iPhone. I wouldn't need a wallet.
There's one thing you would need.
I wouldn't need keys to my car. I wouldn't need keys to the house.
One thing you would need.
What would I need?
A camera, because the iPhone camera could never, unless we get some crazy.
But I wouldn't need to carry it on a day-to-day basis.
No, because that's true. Because if you're gonna take a picture of the hobo with the funny sign, you don't need the 12 gigapixel.
I'd only bring the good camera to conventions and whatnot when I expected it.
At least the one thing that has obviated this desire to some degree for me is the fact that now that I have a really nice bag to carry my laptop in, the bag is basically my Merce now, and I always have everything in the world that I need in that Merce. Kind of like how before I had the Merce, but before I also had a cell phone. Remember at RIT? That trench coat, I once showed that I could carry a full 12-pack of soda completely concealed inside of that trench coat.
Yeah.
I carried everything in the world in that trench coat.
Mm-hmm.
But then at the same time, if I had just a little box that did everything, I don't think I would have needed the trench coat.
Right.
But I kind of like wearing the trench coat with all the stuff in the pockets.
You can do that too. But the point is I also have a bag that I could put everything in. But there are some situations where I just want to go pockets only. And when you're going pockets only, it's cool not to have to have just one thing.
See, this is where pockets only, where I feel like I would always need two devices. I will always need, in the ideal world.
What two devices will you need?
I need the super awesome computer device that does everything and is the iPhone. And then I need the rugged take it camping with me when I'm out hiking in the rain device. Because I doubt I will ever get the iPhone.
But you're not going to have both at the same time.
Oh, no, but I will need to own both devices.
Yeah, but I own a laptop that I use for mobile interneting, and I own an iPhone which I use for mobile interneting. There's a cross, purpose there. But
I guess, in the end, though, the killer app, the real killer app, the thing that's going to change the world in a big way, the technological world in a big way, is going to be not just when you have one device that can do, all these things with a good interface, but when you have one device that can do these things that is not in any way tethered to any physical other device or physical location at all. To where the only time it ever needs to be physically connected to anything is when you need to put more power into it.
Well, even then, there's some wireless charging technologies, but they're not that efficient.
Well,
I don't think they can be because of the laws of physics.
There's the fundamental problem that the faster you charge something like that,
the more dangerous.
The more energy there is going through the air that can cook things.
Right, exactly. But there's also there's
also the advances in, shaking things to give them more electricity and solar cells and heat transfer and
Right.
all that kind of
But
business.
there's also the situation in which you would want to connect it to something else. For example, I want to connect it to my computer to transfer everything to a backup hard drive.
But see, here's the thing. It should be able to connect to everything. It should be, I could set it up to where when I'm in my house, it uses, the future Bluetooth, the thing that's better than Bluetooth. And it automatically just connects to all the computers in my house that I told it to and does whatever business, sharing and syncing, whatever that I want it to do with them. But if I carry it elsewhere, it can still synchronize with things through the wireless.
Yep.
That it'll always synchronize with everything when I'm in the car.
And it's able to update its own firmware.
Yep, when I'm in the car, it just automatically knows it's in my car and plays the music and answers the phone through the car stereo.
This kind of thing we're talking about isn't like some future dream. This is technologically possible right now with things that are already invented. It's just nobody's done it. It's done. It's like we've invented everything that needs to be invented. It's a solved problem. It's like, aha, I figured up to get. It's like imagine if no one ever had been to Mount Everest, right? No one had ever made it to the top. A guy figured out how to make it to the top, proved that it would definitely work 100%, and then everyone just sat at the bottom of the mountain and say, I'm not going. Yeah, I don't feel like going up. Yeah, whatever. We know we can do it, right? Yes, let's not. That's what's going on here is we can make this device.
Well, you see.
No one's done it. No one will.
One thing is that the problem with any sort of, because there are a lot of things like this where unified technological advancement or even just unified technological application could revolutionize industries, could revolutionize businesses, could revolutionize people's lives. But different people have their hands in different parts of the pie, and it's kind of a tragedy of the commons where that one person investing in it will fail and lose money. You need many people in different industries or different realms to invest simultaneously. But then again, anytime people do that, other groups of people immediately defect and invest in a contrary technology, and then everything gets fucked to all fuck.
And there's the thing, open source can do it, right? Open source is ready to make the software that will make these things happen, but the hardware isn't open. And even when you come with open source operating system on a piece of hardware, the T-Mobile G1 doesn't have all the hardware necessary. It doesn't have the headphone hole. It doesn't have a couple other things. It's not perfect. We need someone to just make the device. Even look like the Nokia N810, which comes really close and runs Linux, doesn't have a phone in it.
What we really need more than anything are standards that people actually follow for all sorts of communication and all sorts,
We do. We have a lot of standards.
There's the problem. We have a lot of standards that are all very purpose specific and very useless outside of very specific realms and very limited because of different companies trying to push different formats, and also the fact that people don't write software to take advantage of it. I mean, my iPhone, there aren't that many car stereos to where I can just have my iPhone in my car and just play the music Bluetooth automatically without thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's totally possible. You could have a head unit. Your car stereo could be Bluetooth. Well, the iPhone is another example. The iPhone could, right, give you stereo audio over Bluetooth, but they didn't put the A2DP profile on it, so it can't.
Now, why? Oh, we can't know.
We don't know. But if they did put the A2DP profile on the iPhone 3G or the regular iPhone, you could listen to stereo audio with wireless headphones, all right? And if they did that, right, you could have a car stereo head unit. Why? I don't think there are any car stereo head units, and none that I've seen, that have A2DP, so that any device with stereo audio Bluetooth, right, could send its stereo audio Bluetooth to the car head unit, and then it would come out of your car speakers with no wires and no nothing. There's no reason that can't be, but no one's made one. I don't know. Why not? Oh.
But anyway, things of the day. So I discovered possibly the first example of a riced out car in the history of cars. I found it.
History of motor cars, right? You're not looking at some pimped out chariots, are you?
I'm sure there were some pimped out chariots.
How about some pimped out horse and carriage?
There's this gallery here of
I would have a pimped out horse and
modified
carriage.
Model
why?
Ts.
You know why I pimp out my horse and carriage?
Why?
Scare off Robin Hood. He knew I was too cool. He wouldn't rob me.
Anyway, I think my bread jokes are better than that.
Whatever.
Right here, I'm going to link to this. This is the fourth picture in a series of 9 pictures of interesting modifications and applications of the Model T, the first mass-produced real car. And basically, because the car was so simple, Like the whole body was just this metal kind of shell. You can just pop it right off, pop something else on there,
Yeah,
drive
I don't
around
know-
without the shell.
I don't know how many people have looked in a Model T, right?
I've driven one. I've ridden in one.
Yeah, but
and
look at it. Open up the hood of a new car. There's a lot of shit in there, right? Most of that shit is like air conditioning, really complicated transmission, alternators and things, right? The Model T, right? Open that bitch up.
let me put it this
It
way.
is just
I'll explain it in layman terms.
a pulley and a motor.
Not even. It looks like a little motor and a rubber band connected to a shaft.
Which connects to the axle pretty much directly.
And it's a beautiful thing to behold. And it was actually, it drives a lot better than you'd think.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where you get diminishing returns. It's sort of like the space shuttle where it's like, okay, a big rocket, just plain old rocket, gonna get you into space 75% of the way, right? Plain old rocket. Okay, we need to get into space 99%. Well, then suddenly it gets much more complicated. As you get higher and higher in the percentages. To get from 75% to 80% doesn't take much. It takes some wigglings. But to get from 99% to 99.5% takes like this incredibly complicated computer system with a million things all over the place.
But anyway, back in the early Model T days,
You mean the early 1900s?
there were companies
In the Industrial Rev?
that would make race car looking bodies, slick looking for metal frames, metal bodies. And you'd buy them and pop them out. You basically kind of like how you change the faceplate on your fancy cell phone. You just swap out the body on your car, and now you have a hip looking roadster.
Yeah, 'cause-
and punk kids would buy these things and have a little roadster.
Yeah, because when you think about it, Model T didn't really have a suspension, right? As
Yeah,
we
it did.
know.
It had that kind of whalebone business.
Right. But I mean, you could just take the body off, the little roof and that little, the seats and whatnot, and it was just two axles in the motor. Just put something else on top. Real easy. I could do it. You don't need to go to mechanic school or anything. I wonder how mechanics made money back in those days when anyone could fix their own car.
Because people couldn't. But anyway, all I want to point out is that in the spirit of one of my favorite websites ever,
laughatrice.com.
perhaps, I'm even making the face right here at the monitor.
Man, I wish there was a race, like an actual race, where just all cars like that. That'd be cool.
There were back then.
No, Model T specifically.
I'm sure there were local league, kind of like how in Canada you had like the local boxing league, the local hockey league. I'm sure there was the local riced out Model T league.
I want to see a Model T race right now, today.
Anyway, what do you got for me, Captain Thing of the Day?
This is all over the news. It's not that exciting, but I didn't have anything else. Basically, this dude, he took a bunch of solenoids.
Solenoids.
Oh,
man.
Solenoids of the wind. I don't know if people learn about solenoids in school.
I don't think you understand how pivotal and how my middle school and high school life revolved around solenoids. And I would say like a good 10% of the stories I have from high school were caused directly by the intervention of a solenoid.
Yeah, I mean, solenoids, if you don't know about them, you should learn how they work. It's pretty simple. You don't have to know that much. All you have to pretty much know is how a magnet works and how an electromagnet works.
We made one out of glass that then shattered and hurt someone.
The best is using it to like get rods to like hover in the air.
We used one to make a lock that could lock a door, and then we couldn't unlock it. We made a rail gun.
That's what you're supposed to do.
That's pretty much the second thing you do after you learn what a solenoid is.
All right, so this guy made a bunch of solenoids. I don't know, or he might have bought them. I can't tell. And he hooked them up to a computer and a control system and whatnot. And he had each solenoid hitting something different, which makes a noise. And he made a solenoid symphony, and it's got a funky beat to it.
That's pretty cool.
And it's just a little video here. And I
can say this: the best thing that ever happened to me in middle school was when we got a hold of a solenoid from an old car. And once we got a 12-volt power supply to it, let me tell you, that thing was called the finger breaker.
That's what it is.
Because it broke someone's finger immediately.
Wait, was that a solenoid for like the car door locks?
Yes.
Oh yeah, those.
Basically, it was ripped out of an old car, and we applied 12 volts to it, and someone stupid got hurt.
Well, so you gotta do is you go to the junkyard and you pick those things up real easy.
Actually, they're really easy to make too, kids.
Yeah.
We talked about
wire plus electricity plus tube.
We talked about how the TI-80X was so important in becoming the kind of technological hackers that we are today. I feel like solenoids are like number 5 or 6 on the list of 10
you
things
could
like
control
that.
solenoids with a TI-80X.
Yes, actually you could.
Yeah.
Also, kids, you can make a solenoid at home in about an hour.
Even less. Depending.
No. All right, making it from scratch. I mean, think about it, Scott. Wind.
You don't have an automatic winder?
Well, I made an automatic winder out of a screwdriver.
You know what I make an automatic winder out of?
What'd you make it out of?
Well, if you go, I don't know how people know about these things. It's basically sort of they have this thing. It's a combination apple core and slicer and peeler.
Oh, man, I love those things.
And you basically stick an apple on these spikes, and then you spin it, and the apple gets pushed through all these metal things, and one metal thing skins the apple. Another metal thing takes the core out of the apple, and it also cuts the apple into like a thin spiral. So
normally stuff like that is really gimmicky, but these things are awesome.
It really works. It's suction cups to the table and everything, and you can use it to make apple cake or pie or whatever, right? And you can just put your tube on that and then hold, your wire and spin away.
No, there's a much better way. You just take a drill press.
I got an idea. To get a Model T and put a tube and hold the wires. And then
Right. So it's a buzzword. It's a big buzzword now.
People are talking about it lately a lot.
And we're not going to talk about what it is. We're not going to go into the technological.
Kind of a little bit.
I don't think we should at all, because that's not the interesting part. And Google.
I kind of want to talk about some interesting histories, though, a little bit.
But Google, I think we should talk about the histories more from our perspective, because these things came and went in this cycle, and we lived through a couple of those cycles.
Yep. Yeah.
And also, if you want the actual history of this, or the definite, all that business, just Google it. And, if we tell it to you, it'll basically us saying, well,
I think part of it is that there's been varying definitions over time, and that's sort of what's important about it.
I think the only important thing is that cloud computing is not a new thing at all. It's
no.
just a new word for that thing. It's like it's kind of like if we made up a buzzword called, I don't know, the flebo.
Yeah. Well, here, basically the deal is,
the
right?
snazaflange, and we said, what's a snazaflange? What if you could have like websites,
it's a
right? What the fuck's a samaflange? Anyway.
The thing is, over the course of computing history, there's been sort of like this cycle, right? And the cycle has gone back and forth between centralized and distributed computing, back and forth, right? At the beginning, computers are big, filled up a whole room, right? What if more than one person wanted to use it at once? Not easy. So they had, one machine and it had multiple terminals so that, a bunch of people shared this one computer. And it was, centralized computing. There's one CPU, a whole bunch of people, right?
But then when personal PCs came around, you could start to have that level of power on an individual desk. So
right.
Individual people got control. But then that wasn't enough because you had more power from main. I mean, basically the reason I kind of want to skip talking about all the technological and the history is that a long time ago, we kind of decided that we wanted to turn the Monday show into commentary and just talking about tech at our level, as opposed to always doing these shows where we kind of explain.
But if we talk about this at our level, the show's going to be over and done with in 2 seconds.
Not really, because we have a lot of opinions and commentary and anecdotes.
I don't know. It's a pretty simple pro and con deal, I think.
I was so against the idea of cloud computing back in the day. Like in the, 1994 through 1999, cloud computing scared the shit out of me.
Well, the idea back then, right, was that you would get a computer that was an almost nothing computer. Didn't even have a hard drive almost, right? It was basically the most minimal computer. It would be stupidly cheap, like $100, which in those days was insane. It's still kind of insane. I guess a computer, that 1990s computer nowadays would be $100, but a new computer, right? And basically you turn the computer on, it would dial up, because dial up is what they had in those days, and everything the computer did would come over the phone line, all the software, everything. And then you wouldn't need to install your operating system or update your software or anything, and all your data would be stored online and everything. And that was the idea back then, was benefit, right? You don't have to worry about hard drives crashing. You always have up-to-date software, and your computer's really cheap, which was a big deal in those days when even shitty computers are expensive. And the cons were, well, people, sort of underestimated the slowness and shittiness of dial-up, and it didn't work.
The real issue was that was in kind of the early part of the big battle over, like, internet censorship and, before the DMCA and all this stuff. It was kind of, people were fighting tooth and nail between the forces of controlling computing resources from central authorities and having the power to do what you want with your technology. And this was back when companies like Real Media and Oracle were basically saying, we need to control how people use technology, or else it's all going to go to hell. And there was a big fear among a lot of technologists, especially a lot of punk kid technologists who were big into piracy and copyright infringement, that like digital DRM and all these things would come to be. Like the moment they take away our hardware, the moment I don't have control over my hardware, the moment I have to rely on someone else's hardware out there, is when the internet dies and the freedom to exchange information dies and cootie old men control everything.
Yeah, think about it. If your computer just got everything over the wire from say Google, right? Well, how does it work? You basically turn on your computer and you're at google.com. Okay, I want to use Office. Okay, well, Google Docs is right there. All right, I want to play, I don't know, BioShock. Okay, double click here, pay $50. Now you can play BioShock. Congratulations. You know, you can't install anything. There's no control by you. It's no different than using the iPhone today, which is pretty much exactly the same as using the iPhone today.
In fact, I'm trying to search for it. I can't find it offhand, but back then, someone made a post on Slashdot that has stuck with me to this day. And it was basically one of those, it was much like the famous, "Do you hear me? I'm not going to take it anymore" speech from that movie. And it was a guy basically saying that, you know, you control this and you take this away, and they control this media of communication, and then they control this one, and they're never going to stop. And we always move on to, we move on to ad hoc computing. We move on to wireless. If you keep taking it away, we'll keep moving on. If we have to, we'll use mirrors and we'll reflect light through the air in a way that you can't stop us. Do you hear me? Do you fucking hear me? You can't take away our right to communicate, and we will always find a way around it. Do you fucking understand what it is that we do? We are hackers and we will fuck you.
Yep.
And that was like the rallying call of the internet, and to me that back then. And I was really afraid of, cloud computing, even though no one called it that back then.
Well, some people did, but most people just called it like, thin clients, net computers, that sort of thing.
But then, broadband came around, and basically cloud computing didn't matter to me in college because we had this crazy network. And instead of cloud computing where I had to rely on someone else, it was more like my computer was accessible to me from anywhere I went. So I just had a Samba share, and wherever I went, all over campus, I could just go to my computer and get all my crap.
Yeah, because we weren't going around the world. We were just going around this campus, and the campus had this incredible network, right, that covered the entire place. So it was sort of like, if you made the Ghost in the Shell world, but in this tiny place, and you never left the tiny place, so it was like living in the Ghost in the Shell world.
Back then,
and you had one computer that was like your powerhouse that was connected to the network. So as long as you stayed in the world, you basically had cloud computing, even though your cloud was completely controlled by you.
And when I went out of the world, I didn't have any way. I mean, none of us had cell phones. Like my cell phone, I couldn't afford it.
At least not freshman year.
Yeah, I couldn't afford it anymore.
No one had a cell phone that did anything but make calls until later.
But I couldn't afford my old brick cell phone anymore. None of us had cell phones, and we had one car in the entire front row crew, so we couldn't even leave the campus, let alone try to access media.
At least
outside.
For the first couple years. Later on, it changed.
But even then, eventually, we didn't have access to internet outside.
Yep. Well, I mean, even if I went home, I could SSH, I guess, but it wasn't like I'm walking around the street or I'm using computers all over the place.
But I really got to say, it was the idea of cloud computing as something that is viable and useful to me really didn't come to be until Google made it happen.
Well, what's happened is people were mostly computing locally, right, for pretty much everything.
I mean, remember when you, the classic, I'm reinstalling my computer, and what did you do? You got all your drivers or, whatever, and you installed all your stuff, and then you went around installing the 30 applications and games that you used.
Yeah, and in those times, there were websites, but websites were mostly getting information, commenting, that sort of thing. And there was webmail, but webmail was basically the thing, it connected to the same exact email account as you connected to with, say, your Outlook or your Thunderbird. And what you would do is on your computer, you would use your Thunderbird, and it'd be so nice.
Well,
but if you were somewhere else,
Thunderbird, back then, most people just use Outlook Express.
I didn't use that, or Eudora, whatever. But
well, you know what I used? Because before then, I used my GeoCities account with Pop3, and right. I used Outlook Express something. I had some other ways. There was also a web
I used
thing.
Thunderbird or Mozilla Mail or whatever it was at the time.
But back then, the internet was ghettoized. Basically, if you had an email address from any of the places you could get email, like an ISP, you were pretty much a second-class citizen. Everyone real on the internet had like basically a .edu somewhere.
Or they had their own domain and their own mail server. But you would use, when you wanted to read your email or something like that, you would use an email application that talked to your mail server with POP3 or IMAP. And you controlled the email server or were, pretty close to it usually.
And remember, most people, like, we would use POP3. Like, I would pop my email down to my own computer. And that was, like, it would physically be there and it wouldn't be anywhere else
even
anymore.
if your ISP went away, you still had all your emails on your computer.
Because
and in
I
fact,
didn't trust
usually
the ISP.
deleted the emails from the ISP after you downloaded them.
Because we didn't trust our ISPs. I hated my ISP.
And the only time you would use webmail or something like that is if you really needed to check your email when you weren't around, and webmail sucked. It was like squirrel mail or something.
Oh my God.
It was
Like
painful to use.
Like even RIT, right? When I was at RIT, if I wanted to check my email and I wasn't on campus, like, I went home for break, I would like SSH back to RIT to like the VAX cluster. And well, actually, I used I think I used the HP machine.
Whatever.
Remember, there's the VMS, there was some other one. They were like, anyway, I would basically SSH back to RIT, telnet into the port that was my email on the special Unix server, and then I'd run Elm.
I used Mutt because I'm not an idiot.
I used Elm because it did the job.
Right.
It did.
The reason they realized that Elm was so bad that they made Pine, which is not Elm, and then Mutt was even better than that.
Pine is not Elm.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that business.
Yeah.
But even then, it wasn't the cloud. It was more like I trusted I feel like the core of it is trust, one, that the resource will be there in the future. Trust, two, that you'll be able to access it from anywhere. And trust, three, that the resource will not unduly control you. And basically, I never trusted anyone on the internet, whereas you shouldn't have in the 90s.
You shouldn't trust anyone on the internet ever.
But back then, like, the internet was such a wild west that, like, I did not trust anyone ever for crap on the internet. And at RIT, I didn't trust the internet. I trusted RIT because I was paying them a lot of money.
Yeah. And, I trusted the CS department more than I trusted the other RIT net. It was like the separate network within the network.
Yes, also the IT department also had a separate network.
Yeah,
and basically the rest of the campus was kind of also a wild
I still
west.
have an account on that CS network. They haven't deleted it.
Yeah, I have an alumni IT account. I could have paid for my email, but I didn't bother.
Well, I mean, like, my regular RIT account is totally gone, but the account I had in the CS department is still there. I can still SSH and use their computers.
Well, I can still...
They didn't change anything.
I can still telnet in and get to my financial aid information.
Oh, I can't do that.
I can go in there because I did something with it like a year ago. I don't know if I still can, but look at this. Google got to the point where I may not trust them with my data 100% necessarily, but I trust that my data is accessible and I trust that I can get to it to the point that I've basically started to use Google for just about everything I do.
Well, what they've done to make, to I guess here is that the number one, they've actually made something reliable. They've made a web user interface that is as good or actually better than the desktop interfaces, right? Not having to install or upgrade or maintain the software saves you work. It does,
Yes, I've gotten to the point where for the majority of things that I do on any computer, I'm not just OS agnostic. I'm not just platform agnostic. I am computer agnostic. Like, it doesn't matter what computer I'm on. I can access 90% of the things
as long
I need
as it has
computers
an unfiltered internet connection and a web browser. It's like I'm at home. It used to be you'd use your computer, your personal computer, and you'd feel at home. But if you used any other computer, it was sort of like a horrible experience because it wasn't customized for you.
Yes,
now you can use any internet-connected device with a browser that's not filtered, and it's like you're at home.
This is actually a really kind of interesting revelation I had many years ago. But for most of my life, it used to be that I'd go out into the world and I'd enjoy myself, and I'd work, and I'd go to school. I would do things in the world. But whenever I was out in the world, I was disconnected from the other world, the internet. So I kind of would always have this sense of coming home. Like, whenever I returned to my home base, be it my parents' house, or my apartment, or my dorm room, or my house, or wherever I went, like, my home base, it was like I came home. And what did I do when I came home? I took off my shoes, I hung up my coat, I would then go and check my messages.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was like, all right, I am home. I can now get all the messages, all the things that I could not get when I was out in the world. I would go to my answering machine and listen to the messages. I would go to my computer, read my email. Then I would go to like my forums, read my forums, read the internet. And then it really made this sense of homecoming, not just to my home, but to my other world. And then at RIT, that was kind of shattered a little bit because we had an answering machine. No one ever called that phone number except spammers. So we basically ignored it. The answering machine was just there because it was free. We owned it. And then, eventually I got a cell phone and I just carried that with me. So now getting home, I didn't care about my messages because my messages were with me anywhere. And then, I could check my email anywhere on campus. So coming home was kind of time to check the internet and my email, but home was now RIT as opposed to just my apartment. But then I moved to the mountains. I did not have internet access. My cell phone didn't even work. I couldn't even use my cell phone where I lived. And I didn't pay for a landline. I had no possible means of communication with the outside world. And my sense of homecoming disappeared. And I became really disconnected from the world. And I actually had two homes. I had my internet home, which was work. I would often go to work on the weekend for like an hour to use the internet, and I would be home. But then I would go home to my house, and I'd be home, but not really, because I was disconnected from all the things that I really needed.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward, because of all these revelations, I realized that my intellectual home, like my kind of connected to the world home, has absolutely no physical location whatsoever anymore.
No.
Wherever I am, I can get online and access 90 to 95% of everything I need.
Yep. Now, the only thing here, right, is that lately there's been sort of a bigger push for cloud computing yet again, into where, they're trying to ask you to do more and more of your stuff online.
But who's they?
Well, you got Google and Microsoft and Adobe's trying to do some online stuff, where instead of buying a piece of software, installing it and running it locally, you just use someone else's software through the web or through some other mechanism. And things are saved on their servers and then all that.
Now here's the thing. I say 95% because I use the cloud for the 95% of those things. But there's always going to be that 5% where I don't trust. Basically, it comes down to trust in the end. Not even performance, because the old argument used to be you can never have good performance. But technology is going to make that go away. You will eventually be able to have good performance in the cloud for anything. The only issue that will always remain is trust. And I don't think I will ever trust anyone in the world other than myself to manage that last 5% of my information. I mean, our podcast, our radio show, my personal documents that really matter. I will always want to have, or my music collection, or, all the illegal stuff that I may or may not do, or the political stuff that I may not want out there. I will always need my home base that I manage, that no one else has any power over whatsoever, that I'm the master of my own domain, because that's kind of like that last inch in V for Vendetta, that one thing that no matter what happens in the outside world, I still have that, and they can't get me 100%.
Well, I think what the solution is going to be, actually, is Scott's prediction. It's almost guaranteed, right? Is that the average person, right, who doesn't know or care about computers much, is going to use the Gmails or whatever. They're going to let the big corporation or the big entity in the sky, centralized computer, right? They're going to let all their stuff be on there, Microsoft, Apple, MobileMe, whatever it is. And that's what they're going to do because that's all they know to do. They can't handle it themselves, right? And it'll be a much better experience for them, a much easier experience.
And you know what?
It'll actually be better for everyone else, too.
I actually agree because I don't think everyone has that 5%.
Right. But I think what's going to happen is the people who care about computing, the nerds, the geeks, the hackers, the whatnot, right? What they're going to do, right, is sort of like what we've been moving to, which is you have a server somewhere and you have, you're still getting all the benefits of cloud computing because you have some computer out in the cloud that you are controlling that is yours and you can get it from anywhere. And it's just run by you instead of run by companies. So, for example, the average person is going to use Twitter, right? Someone runs, big old Twitter and all these normal people join it and use it. The geeks are going to they're all going to run their own Laconica servers that will communicate with each other and you get all the advantages, but you run it yourself. You are in control of the cloud, your piece of it. And that's
because the thing is, I kept saying, the 5%, I have control at home, but that's the same control. I mean, theoretically, there's the tiny danger of like, what if your colo is evil or all? But those people are a lot more trustworthy because they don't give a shit about what you're doing.
I think what could also happen is especially could happen much more easily if IPv6 came around, right? Is it would become very easy for people to just buy sort of like made home server things that you would put in your house and just connect and they would just work. And then sort of everyone would be able to run their own. But at the same time...
Well, then, see, you'll say... Now, again, people out there might say, but bandwidth. No, bandwidth will eventually always be more and plentiful.
Yeah, bandwidth my ass. People are already buying sling boxes and plugging them in who don't know anything about technology, and they totally work.
But not just that. The only real concern here is, your safety. I lost my train of thought like 100% here, and I was trying to talk until I remembered it, but I totally forgot.
Now, look, a sling box is people don't know about this, right? It's a device you plug it into your home media center, right? And then any device anywhere in the world that has a sling client, you can use to connect to your personal sling box and control your television from wherever you are. So if like you leave a DVD in the DVD player at home, you can watch it on like your Palm Pilot or your Palm Trio on the train or something, as long as it's internet.
Slingbox is awesome, but I remembered my train of thought, and it's a good train of thought.
Nice.
The other argument will be, but there's still that, the danger, because the big concern hackers and geeks always have is that you don't want someone else to be able to screw you or a single point of failure to be able to prevent you. I mean, yes, I have my server in the sky. What if the ISP turns evil and decides that they don't like what I'm doing?
I have a backup.
Yes, but what if I have an ISP at home where currently there's a big monopoly on ISPs, you don't have a lot of choices, and they decide to limit bandwidth or block ports or whatever, and while those are concerns, in the end, they'll also be covered by technology. I mean, in the end, I think where the real action is going to be, like in the long, long run, I'm talking like lifetime, maybe even longer. In the end, all the geek important, you can't be the boss of me communication is going to be some sort of global, ad hoc, anonymous, wireless cloud. Like cloud in the truest sense, to the point that communication, at no point does anyone have control over the cloud anymore.
Yeah, there's going to be a point at which, right, you can get a device that will plug into the wall, right, will have a very powerful, very fast wireless network with a big radius, right?
And everyone will have one.
It will automatically form a mesh network with other devices in range and automatically create routing tables. No one will have to manage it manually, right?
And it won't just be that. Everyone's cell phone will do this. All the cell phones will link up. All the iPhones will link up. Every device you carry. I mean, there's a lot of talk about having cars that have little sensors that have a cloud of car computing, to where every car on the road communicates with all the cars near it, and by extension with all the cars down the road. And then instead of having a centralized thing that says, there is traffic ahead, use an alternate route, the cars all know on their own. And this sort of thing is like the buzzword of cloud computing is such weak sauce, and people who use it, by and large, really aren't thinking far. They're not thinking in Asimov terms. They're thinking in like Google and Adobe right now
because what
terms.
You're talking about here is actually beyond cloud computing. It's mesh networking. But cloud computing is really it's no different than the client-server model of there's a server, you just get everything from the server, which does the real work.
But I feel
and you're
like we don't
client.
need to call that cloud computing.
Well, the reason it's called cloud computing is because there's a difference between the server is right across the room and there's a bunch of clients, and the server being somewhere out there you don't really know it's in a cloud. It's just a larger separation between the server is on my internet and the server is some mystical thing in the internet lost somewhere.
I guess for me, I feel like the way people are using cloud computing right now, like most people when they say it, they're really just referring to kind of the mundane next steps that we already have that are just getting slightly more polished. But they talk about those things like they're a revolution. And I don't think they are yet.
No, but yeah, cloud computing, the term has been used in so many different ways that it's sort of loaded. But yeah, people nowadays are usually just using it to refer to web application,
yes,
like
but
Gmail or Hotmail.
I guess I feel like that is it's kind of like I've discovered copper, and all right, what if I made a club out of it? And then someone says, yeah, but what if you made a spear? And then the person with the club is like, clubs in the future. It's all about the clubs. Spears, that's like 100 years in the future. We can't even worry about. Spears are so impossible right now. Clubs are so awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about spheres.
Yeah, but eventually, if everyone has these, crazy wireless things, everyone will plug one in their house and just this network will appear that is completely not controlled by anyone. And everything will just connect to everything else.
Yep.
And that's it.
I realize, I think the only reason I feel like why I'm more, I guess, jaded about the term cloud computing than you are, and why I'm kind of more saying it should mean more, is that I feel like too many technology kind of pundits and bloggers and people, when they refer to cloud computing, they always kind of refer to it with this air of it's such an amazing thing, when it's really just like the next logical step.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really care so much about which terms get used in which ways. I'm more just concerned of what the technological reality is.
Well, you know what I really am concerned about right now? Eating potato soup. So I think we're done for the night. This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.